This is the T1002V, a brand new adventure bike from Morbidelli, who you might remember as an Italian heritage brand. But now they're built out in China, and it's gotta be said, this bike delivers a phenomenal amount of features, all for a very low asking price of £7,999. So look, is it too good to be true? Or can you actually deliver such an accomplished bike on such a tight budget? Well, we're here in sunny Lancashire today on a media day to take it for a spin to find out. So what is it exactly that makes this bike such good bang for its buck? Well, we'll start with the engine, a 997cc V-twin, basically unheard of for under 8 grand, and it makes a respectable 88 horsepower peak at 7,750 RPM and 89 Nm of peak torque. Now the chassis is decent too, with a steel cradle frame suspended on a KYB fork and shock, with both being fully adjustable. Brakes are from J-Juan with a pair of 4-pot calipers up front on 320mm discs, and there are cast aluminium wheels on this particular bike, with a 19-inch up front, a 17 at the rear, and they're shod with Pirelli's Scorpion Rally STR tyres. Where the value for money really hits hard though is with the technology and features, like 4 riding modes which are fitted as standard, cornering ABS, traction control, cruise control, a 7-inch full-colour TFT dash, connectivity features, TPMS, LED lighting, a 12-volt socket, a USB-C socket, heated grips, and a heated seat for the rider. Then on top of all that, from a practical perspective, it's well appointed too, with crash bars, a sump guard, a centre stand, all as standard fit, and the 3-piece aluminium luggage. Whilst not feeling like jivvy levels of build quality, well, they're a fraction of the price at £499 when purchased with the bike, and in fact, till the end of 2025, they're currently offering them for free. Now, before we get onto the riding, a quick word on the ergonomics. I'm about 5'9" or 175 centimeters, and this bike comes in at 820mm in the seat height, so it's a fairly easy reach to the floor for me. I wouldn't say I can quite flat foot it, but it feels pretty comfortable, with that being a fairly middling seat height. Now, as you might imagine, with an adventure bike, you've got wide bars that are set fairly far back, and so you're nice and upright in the back angle, and then the foot pegs are fairly spongy and rubbery, although those inserts are removable, so if you do want to off-road and you want a bit more grip, then you've got that option. Now they do give a wet weight figure of around 264 kilograms, I believe, but I'm told, I think, that includes the luggage. So realistically, without that, it might be 10 or 20 kilos less, but still it's not a proper lightweight, and so you might want to have a sit on one if 820mm sounds a little bit tall to you, just to see if it feels manageable. Overall though, nice and spacious, not too heavy for me, not too tall for me either. And so I guess we better crack on. You know, one of the things that really piqued my interest about coming to ride this bike is the fact that it gets a proper V-twin, whereas you might be expecting with a fairly affordable Chinese-made bike to get like a parallel twin that they've bought in. Plus, it's 80 degrees, which is quite unusual. Typically, you'll find a 75-degree V-twin or a 90, so that does give it a point of differentiation. And so, yeah, a slightly more premium, perhaps, engine configuration than you'd typically expect for, you know, £7,999. Out on the road, there's definitely some positives. It does have that V-twin soul. It's torquey as well, which is nice and usable, and I'd also say pleasantly smooth, both in terms of the level of vibes and also the throttle response, which doesn't have any choppiness at lower speeds. Even up on the motorway, although there are some little vibes creeping in, they're not the annoying ones, they're just the ones that let you know you're riding a V-twin, which I think might be a good thing. Then you've also got the gearbox, which has a nice mechanical, satisfying reassuring clunk to it. And so while there isn't a quick shifter available on this bike, either as standard or as an accessory, I still quite enjoy shifting through the box, and it shifts quite nicely without the clutch if you just give it a flick of the wrist, if you're into that sort of thing as well. The only thing I will say is perhaps it's not the most exciting engine because of that 90 horsepower peak figure that perhaps isn't quite enough to really stir the soul on a relatively weighty bike like this. It's just not up there with a Multistrada V2 or something like that where you'd pay a bit more money for it. And so if you are a bit of a thrill seeker and you want a bit more top end and liveliness, then perhaps you might find this comes up a little bit short. But then for £7,999, it's it's difficult to grumble. To be fair as well, I don't think it's helped by the sound. It doesn't give you a real exhilarating sensation, possibly because it's got, a rather large silencer on it, as you'll see from this bike over here. Let's go and take a quick look, which is partly down to emissions and stuff like that. It's slightly obscured by the cases on mine, but yeah, it's not super loud at the exhaust, especially when you're on the bike. And then also, while there is a bit of induction sound, it's not the loudest, it's slightly muffled. And so yeah, a bit more acoustic tuning, like Yamaha do with the tank grills, for example, just might have made it that touch more exciting to ride. I will say as well, sports mode for me is a bit of a must. It makes the most of what the bike does have, especially on a dry day like today, although you can only change mode, I believe, at a standstill, and it's a little bit of a faff. You got a mode button over here, and then instead of pressing down to go through the modes, for some reason you press up, but that goes down on the screen, and then you can get it locked in by pressing down, which is actually enter. And so yeah, not particularly intuitive. You might start to find out that that's a little bit of a running theme, but it is there. 4 modes: standard, sport, rainy, off-road. And so if you want to extract as much as possible out of that 90 horsepower, this does the trick. It gives you a bit more snap, especially in the lower gears at lower speeds. Although I will still say, when the speed picks up, well, regardless of the throttle map, you'll still feel the limitations of that peak power figure with the weight figure. Handling, I've got to say, it's quite impressed me. Like I say, it's not the lightest bike, but I will say it's pretty light on the steering. And as soon as I first rolled away on it, I was quite impressed with that. There are 2 versions of this bike. This is the standard one with the cast wheels. There's an X version with tubeless spoke wheels for an extra 200 quid. But I would be tempted, I'd like to try both. But yeah, I'd be tempted to go for this one if you're purely riding on the road, which is probably predominantly what this bike is designed for. Because it does have that nice light steering, and I guess the cast wheels are probably something to do with that. Brakes are good. It's got a firm feel at the lever, which I like. They're not really grabby or super powerful, but I like the amount of feel I'm getting back from them. The levers are adjustable as well, so another nice feature at £7,999. Suspension is from KYB, and it's fully adjustable all round. There's about 180mm of travel, so like I say, not a hardcore off-roader, but it's there if you want to do some gravel work. And all in, I can't say I've got many complaints really about how the bike handles. Perhaps I'd swap out the tyres. It's on Pirelli Scorpion Rally STRs, which are more of an adventure all-rounder, and they're probably not the best if you were doing more road-based touring. And they are quite noisy on the motorway as well at 70 or 75. So some quieter tyres have been my preference. But still, you've got to say, for the price, it's a decent tyre to get as standard, even if they are OEM. And so yes, all round, a nice handling bike. Now, I've already taught you roughly through the ergonomics, which are, I would say, you know, I'm still finding them quite comfortable. It's a moderate seat height that's a nice balance. Nice wide bar position that gives you, you know, a sat-up riding position that I think I could sustain for a long time. Comfy pegs with some spongy rubbers in. And the only thing I will say in terms of comfort is that perhaps the windscreen is a little bit of a faff to adjust. You've got two quick release type skewers here that are a bit like something you see on a bicycle. And you've got to do both of those. And then it's quite... I haven't quite got the knack of that. There we go. Not the smoothest. And it doesn't seem like there's a humongous range of motion as well, or range of adjustability. And so as you can see, it's not really something you can do easily on the move. And so I'll probably put that down as another one of those little usability niggles where it just doesn't feel easy to use or intuitive. But then again, for the price, as I keep saying, you know, handguards, heated grips, heated seat, they all work nicely. Adjustable windscreen, removable rubbers in the foot pegs, adjustable foot controls as well. A decent perch for the passenger, a back pad on that very affordable 3-piece luggage. And so I'm sure plenty of people will be willing to put up with stuff like that. For what it has to be said is a lot of value for money. It's a theme that sort of continues with the tech as well. You can't particularly argue with how much you're getting for your money, like cruise control and the riding modes, and I think it's got cornering ABS as well, the heated bits, all that good stuff, the connectivity through the dash, but it just feels like it could have been slightly better laid out or slightly more well thought out. The cruise control, for example, tops out around 77, 78 miles an hour apparently. Not that I ever ride quicker than that, of course, officer, but if I did, yeah, I wouldn't be able to use the cruise control. And, yeah, things like the heated buttons. The seat is at the top, the grips are at the bottom, which seems like upside down. Even stuff like the indicators, if you stick them on, it's only really shown at the top of the TFT there, and on the right for the right-hand indicator. And it just feels a bit easier to miss, especially on a bright day like today, than a proper physical light that was perhaps set into the dash surround. And I don't think that's just me, because I've seen quite a few indicators left on today when we've been riding in a group. It sort of got me thinking back to when I was riding the Multistrada V2 the other day, where all this stuff was sorted. You know, the screen's really easy to put up and down. The switchgear and dash is all very intuitive. There's plenty of induction noise that just gets you going a bit. It's got a bit more top end as well that makes it more exciting to ride. And just all in, it feels like everything's been considered. But then you remember, the bike I was riding on the day, I think, was probably around 16 grand for the Multistrada V2S. And that's double what you'll pay for this bike. Was it twice as good? I mean, it depends on what you ride for. If you're just using a bike as a set of two wheels to get places on, then it doesn't do that twice as well. But maybe if you do want something that makes you feel good, that's a luxury item, that's a special thing for a Sunday afternoon, I can kind of see how you might be able to justify it being twice as much from that perspective. Of course, one thing I can't really comment on after just a day of riding is the sort of long-term reliability and resilience of a bike like this. Naturally, I think some people will be slightly cautious about that, with it being a relatively new brand. It's built to an aggressive price and all those features as well, like how do they do it without cutting corners? And so I guess the sort of answer to those kinds of questions will become more apparent as they've been on the market for longer and owners' reviews start to roll in and long-term tests and stuff like that. As for the stuff I can comment on though, you know, the riding dynamics, how it feels to use, what it's like to sit on, the ergonomics, well, I have been pretty impressed with it today, although I'd say largely all of that is within the context of the price. You know, is this going to be a bike that someone who's got a Multistrada V4 is going to think of swapping to? Probably not. Is it one for the motorcycle connoisseur? Probably not as well. But for someone who is really price conscious or price sensitive, well, that's a major factor in, you know, their buying decision. decision, well, potentially it opens up a new option, and one that does give you a heck of a lot of features, a heck of a lot of functionality, and also a decent amount of performance. In fact, you know, really there's not much, if anything, that comes close at the £8,000 price mark, certainly if you buy new. And so if that's the top of your budget, and you have to buy new, and a mid to large capacity adventure bike is what you're after, then of course, I'd wholeheartedly recommend going out and demoing one and seeing if it's the bike for you. This is one that I'd really like to know your thoughts on, so do leave a comment down below. And if you want to see some of the other best adventure bikes that I've reviewed this year, then I'll leave a playlist on the screen now so you can catch up. Do hit subscribe for more of the latest motorcycle news and reviews right here on MOTOBOB. And massive thanks for watching today, and we'll catch you in the next video.